complex numbers. Hey, remember when I told you that when we had a negative next week from Monday,
on our true day of finals,
that we couldn't take the square root of a negative number? Now you can, because we're doing a new number system called imaginary numbers. Now, two things you have to remember about this. I equals -1, and I squared, I'm sorry, did I say -1? I equals the square root of -1, and I squared equals -1. So, part one, I'm going to change. Now, yesterday, we didn't know how to take the square root of -9 because there's no real solutions. However, using imaginary numbers, we can get a solution. So I'm going to split this up to -1 times 9. And then the property says I can split up the radical to square root of -1 times the square root of 9. And now I know what the square root of -1 is. It's I. And the square root of 9 is 3. This is almost correct. In mathematics, we do have correctness on the way we write things, kind of like English, because you wouldn't put ain't, right? Ain't. We're going to put the 3 first, then the I. And I'm done. Huh? If you were listening to me when I was screaming over the people that were talking, -1, the square root of -1 equals I. That's where I got the I. Huh? What? It's 9's a perfect square. I want to leave 9 as is, because the square root of 9 is 3. I can simplify that. Well, I could do anything under the radical as long as the two factors multiply to -6. Okay? For instance, I can change this to, if I want, I could change this to square root of -1 times 2 times 3, or I could change it to -1 times 1 times 6, as long as it comes out to -6, right? Here, is this going to help me though? The 2 and the 3? No, because they're not perfect squares. So I might as well just leave it 6. So I'll just leave it -1 times 6. Because there's nothing there's no perfect square that's a factor of 6. Yeah, and then the property says I can break this up to, I could split the radicals to square root of -1 times the square root of 6. That's the property of radicals. And now I know what the square root of -1 is. It's what? I. Now I can't do anything with this. Now, square root or radical is okay to be after the I. If it was a regular whole number or integer, it has to be before the I. Yeah, there's no perfect square. Well, it's, as long as you end up with the integer in front of the I, and as long as you end up with the radical 6 is an irrational number, it has to be after I. Yeah. Okay?
Behind it.
Now, -8. Negative 8 has a perfect square that's a factor. Square root of 4 times 2, and then I have my negative 1, right? Yeah, because there's a negative sign there. Yeah. 4 is a perfect square. Yes. When you're simplifying radicals, you need to take the square root of a factor of a perfect square. Yeah. So break this up. Square root of 4, square root of 2, square root of negative 1. Square root of 4 is 2. Square root of, yeah, there's my I. I need to put the I before the square. So I square root of 2. Not yet, because we're not solving equations. It'll come in the next section. Are you with me, Riesel? I'll do that later if we have time. It's really not important. Okay, number 4, square root of negative 2. What are the factors of 32? How about 2 and 3, 4 and 8? Okay, what are my perfect squares? 4 and 16, right? So I'm going to change this to. Now I'm going to go ahead and put it in this order. Okay. So my perfect square is going to be the square root of 16. That's going to be my integer. Then my I, so I need the square root of negative 1. My negative sign. This is number 4. 6. Trust me, by the end of this section, you're going to do this in your head. Yeah. Okay, I'm breaking it all down for teaching purposes.
My favorite unity.
Huh? We'll get to that later. So I put it in this order because my integer is 4, my I, and then square root of 2 is my irrational number. By the way, square root of 2 is the exact value on standardized tests. Sometimes they'll put in what is the approximation. If they don't ask for exact values, you can use decimal. You can use an approximation. You can put the square root of 2 and get an approximation 1 point, whatever it is. But when they ask you exact value, you have to leave it as square root of 2. Okay, and most standardized tests does indeed deal with exact value. Like the SATs and your finals next week. Okay, part 2, you're solving. When you solve, you have to use the plus or minus. You're going to need the plus or minus sign, right? Okay, so we have to get x squared by itself, right? So the first thing we're going to do is minus 10. 10's go away. I get 3x squared equals negative 36. Now I have to what? Divide by 3. Divide by 3. X squared equals negative 12. How do I get rid of the power of 2? Square root both sides. Okay, so it's x. I'm going to have to simplify the square root of negative. First of all, it's a plus or minus, right? Plus or minus, let's see, let's do the integer first. 12, yeah, I'm going to use 4 times 3. So the square root of 4, which will give me the integer. And then square root of -1, right? And then I have left over the square root of 3. So my number comes first, 2. Then I'm going to put my plus or minus. No, we got the I here. Yep, sorry, we got my I. And then the plus or minus square root of 3. Just wait till we get to division. That's the funner stuff.
I will.
Okay, number 2. I'm going to subtract 26 from both sides. So I get 2x squared equals -36. Divide by 2. I get x squared equals -18. Square root both sides. So I get x equals plus or minus, let's see, 18. 9 and 2, good. So I got the square root of 9, my I, square root of -1, 9 and 2, right? Good. So 3 plus or minus I square root of 2. No, this one should have been with the. No, I'm not sure. I can't remember. To tell you the truth, I'm old and feeble. You think it goes in front?
Yeah.
I really can't remember. The I goes with the radical because this is the real part and that's the irrational part. Okay. All right, number 3. You guys like fractions?
Yeah.
I don't. So let's get rid of fractions. What's the easiest way to get rid of fractions?
Divide.
Yeah, divide or multiply by the reciprocal. Okay, so I get these all go to 1. 1 times this. I get x plus 1 squared equals 5 times -2. -10. That's right, kids. -10. Now what? That's right. Square root both sides. Get rid of the power 2. So now I can drop my parentheses. Let's break this up. Oh, I really can't. Yeah, but none are perfect squares. So how about just -1 times 10, right? Now what? Subtract the 1. The rational part goes in front. So I get -1 plus or minus. My square root of -1 is I. And then I have square root of 10. That's it. That's as far as I can go. I can do E. Yes, ma'am. I can't hear. When I what? Well, yeah, because negative times a negative is a positive. Got it? All right. All right, addition and subtraction. This isn't too bad. So 11 is addition. I can just drop the parentheses, correct? 4 minus I plus 3 plus 2I. Combine like terms. I just rewrote it. That's all I did. I just dropped the parentheses. That's all I did. What? All I did was drop the parentheses. I haven't done anything yet. I'm going to combine like terms. 4 and positive 3 is what? Negative I plus 2I is plus 1I or just I. Aye, Captain. No, because I have a negative 1I and a positive 2I gives me a positive 1I. All right. I have to distribute the minus sign here, correct? Okay, so that gives me 7 minus 5I minus 1 plus 5I. It's 6. Get it?
No.
My 5I's cancel out. 7 minus 1 is 6. Shut up.
It's not a requirement.
13. I have a minus sign out here. I need to distribute. A minus 2 is a positive 2. Minus times positive 9I is minus 9I. Positive negative is going to be a minus 8. And positive 4I. Oh, is there a 6 there?
Yeah.
So that's a 6 minus? Nope, that's a plus. Negative 2 is plus. Okay. Yeah, but don't forget I have to distribute that. So it's a...
That's negative 1.
Yes, I have to distribute the negative 1. Yes. Now, you learned that in pre-algebra and algebra and geometry and algebra 2. We reviewed it. Holy moly. 7th grade you had it. It was in pre-algebra. You had pre-algebra in 8th grade? That's kind of scary. They combine like terms. Let's see, I have a 6, a 2, and a minus 8. Hey, guess what? What's that? 0. Negative 5I. Holy smokes, it took us a while to get there. I'm kind of... Now, division is the funnest, but I'm kind of getting scared of it now. No, we don't have time. Multiplication. Again, the whole idea here, remember, I equals the square root of negative 1, and I squared equals negative 1. Okay? 14, what do we have to do? Distribute the 5I. Negative 10I plus 5I times I is 5I squared. Okay? We rolling? Okay, I squared is what? -1. So I'm going to substitute in -1 for I squared. So I have negative 10I plus 5 times -1. It's not I squared. I could place it with a square root of -1, but that would make it awful. Okay, now I have -5. So remember, our rational numbers go first, and our irrational numbers go second. And I'm done. An irrational number goes on forever and ever and ever. And I is irrational. What? Pretty loud. Yeah. Number 2. What? 5 times -1 is -5. Okay. 2 times 11, 22. 2 times a positive 16i is a positive 32i. Thank you. We're done. I don't have to do any other steps. I can get by with just spending 1 minute on a problem. Okay, 3i times 1. 3i. 3i times -5i is -15i squared. Right. I squared equals -1. So I'm going to replace I squared with -1. So I have 3i minus 15 times -1. So I have 3i plus 15. And I need to put it in the right order. Rational numbers first, irrational second. And there's my answer, kids. Yes. Rational numbers first, irrational numbers second. Great. Look at Look at this. Look at the fun we get to have now. I get a binomial times a binomial. What do I have to use? FOIL. Okay. First, 7 times -1. -7. Outer, 7 times 2i. Positive 14i. Inner, -4i times -1. The positive 4i. And 7, last, 7 times 2i is a positive 14i squared. Okay, I just FOILed, that's all I did. Huh? 7 times, oh, this should be a single. It should be a single, you're right. I know, it's 8. I know, it's 8. It's 8. I know, I'm changing it. Okay, ready? 2 things I have to do here. I have to combine my middle terms, and I have to replace I squared with -1. So I have negative 7 plus 18i minus 8 times negative 1. Okay, let's combine our like terms. We have a negative 7 and a positive 8 gives me positive 1. What? Negative 7 and a positive 8 gives me a positive 1. 8 times negative 1 is negative 8. Negative, negative is a positive. Okay, what am I left with? Thank you.
I'm crippling a question because of you.
Right. Hey, number 18. Are you ready, kids? Are you ready? Okay, FOIL. 6 times 6 is 36. Outer. 6 times negative 3i. Negative 18i. Inner. 3i times 6. Positive 18i. And left. 3i times negative 3i. Negative 9i squared. What? I just FOILed. That's all I did. I'm sorry, what? Yes. Okay. Combine the middle terms. Change I squared. Replace it with negative 1. These cancel out. So I get 36 minus 9 times negative 1. Okay, what's 9 times negative 1? Negative 9. Negative 9 is a positive 9. What does this come out to be? Okay, so I get 36 minus negative 9. Because 9 times negative 1 is negative 9. Plus, minus makes it a plus. 36 plus 9 is 45.
No. Penicillin.
Well, you got to watch your order of operations here. Follow Penn. Wait, guys, quiet. Follow PEMDAS. Parentheses, exponents, multiplication, and division. So I have to do the multiplication first to get negative 9. Yeah, I have to multiply 8 and negative 1 first. That's negative 8. Negative 8 is positive 8. Huh? No. This is... All right, use 8. All right, use negative 8 times negative 1 is what? Positive 8. It doesn't matter where you include that minus sign. No, it doesn't. It doesn't matter. Okay, what's negative 9 times negative 1? Positive 9. What's 9 times negative 1 times a minus? Positive 9. It doesn't matter. Yes, ma'am.
A negative. Can't have a negative. Yeah.
You cannot have an I in the denominator. So, in order to always get a number for my denominator, I'm going to multiply it by what's called its conjugate. 1 plus 2i. But of course, I cannot multiply the denominator. I have to multiply the numerator by the conjugate as well. Okay, now the denominator, FOIL it. 1 times 1 is 1. Outside, 1 times 2i is positive 2i. Inner, negative 2i times 1 is negative 2i. And last, negative 2i times positive 2i is a negative 4i squared. What happens to my middle terms? And then replace my I squared with negative 1. What happens to my negative 4? What happens with negative 4 times negative 1?
1.
Don't forget your 1 over here. So what's my denominator?
5.
Thank you.
Yay.
Let's do our numerator. 5 times 1 is 5. Outer, 5 times 2i is positive 10i. Inner, 3i times 1 is 3i. And last, 3i times 2i is positive 6i squared. So what is this 6i squared happen? What could it end up being? Negative 6, thank you. Combine your middle terms. 13i. And 5 minus 6 is what? I'm tired.
I don't even know if it doesn't have a place. I want to be great. I'm ready.
21. What am I going to multiply by? What's the conjugate? 1 minus I. Very good, kids. The conjugate of 1 plus I. Okay, what's going to happen to my middle terms? They're going to cancel out, right? So my first term, 1 times 1 is 1. My last term, positive I times negative I is negative I squared. Yeah, always use a conjugate of the denominator. Conjugate of the denominator. It's just the same thing, you just change the sign. Okay, what's I squared? That'll be 1 minus negative 1, which is 2.
What?
Shut up.
That's
Numerator. First, 2 times 1 is 2. Outer, 2 times negative I is minus 2i. Inner, minus 7i times 1 is minus 7i. Last, negative 7i times negative I is positive 7i squared. Okay, what's this going to end up being? -7.
Don't do a division in your head.
Okay, 2 minus 7. -5. -2i minus 7i. We don't even have time for the fun word problem.
No.
Why?
Derek called this fucking word problems fun. You know the worst thing about